Rain falls quietly over London, the kind of rain that erases details, softens edges, makes everything feel forgettable. A bus stop, strangers gathered in silence, coats pulled tight, eyes down. No one is watching anyone else, except, for a moment that barely exists, a man stands there, still, unremarkable, invisible in the crowd. Then, a stranger passes behind him, a sudden jab, sharp, precise. He flinches. He turns, the stranger already stepping away.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
And just like that, it's over. No weapon drawn, no struggle, no reason to remember it. Just a man and a passing apology. But 3 days later, he would be dead. His name was Georgi Markov. At first, it felt relatively normal. A high fever, profuse sweating, the kind you sleep off, or try to. Then came the chill, not the kind that makes you shiver, the kind that settles in your bones and refuses to leave. He told himself it was just a severe flu. Fatigue followed, heavy and unnatural, like his body was working against him instead of for him. Hours passed, then a night, and instead of recovering, he got worse. By the time he reached the hospital, something was very wrong. His temperature climbed, his pulse quickened, his body quietly destabilizing. Doctors examined him, routine at first, then again, less routine. Blood work, observations, questions that led nowhere. Because everything came back clean. No infection, no toxin they could identify, no wound. Nothing that explained why a healthy man was slipping so quickly toward death. And that's when Markov said it, carefully, almost apologetically, as if he wasn't sure he should say it out loud at all. I think someone stabbed me with an umbrella. The room didn't react, not immediately, because it didn't make sense. Somewhere between concern and doubt, a detail too strange to hold on to, too specific to ignore, but easier to dismiss. So they moved on, back to the tests, back to the numbers, to what they could prove. And yet, that sentence lingered quietly, like something waiting to be understood, just a little too late. To understand what happened, you have to understand who Markov was. He wasn't just a writer. He was a man who left and did something far more dangerous. He kept talking. After defecting from communist Bulgaria, he re-established himself in the West, at the BBC World Service, at Radio Free Europe, but never hidden, because his voice carried farther than he ever could physically go, crossing borders that people couldn't, slipping through static and interference, threading their way into living rooms, behind drawn curtains, into places where listening alone could cost you everything. Yet still, people listened, because what Markov said, no one else would. He didn't soften his words, didn't disguise his meaning. He mocked power, exposed corruption, not in whispers, but out loud, clear, precise, unapologetic. He named names. One in particular most people wouldn't dare mock, Todor Zhivkov. Zhivkov wasn't just a leader. He was the system, a man who didn't just control a country, but the entire narrative, what people heard, what they believed, what they were allowed to repeat. And Markov was dismantling that, piece by piece. Because in that world, silence wasn't safety. It was obedience. And Markov had chosen, very publicly, not to be silent. This was the Cold War. Not just a battle of armies, but a war of perception, where words could travel farther than bullets and do just as much damage. Because information was power, and embarrassment was something regimes like this could not afford. Markov wasn't just criticizing, he was dismantling credibility. And not just to a small audience, he was speaking to the world. And people believed him. Every story told, every detail exposed, didn't just weaken authority, but made it look fragile. And in a system built on control, that kind of exposure is dangerous. Because tyranny like that don't debate. They don't correct the record. They erase the problem. Quietly. Completely. Some believe the order came from the KGB, an organization that specialized in solutions and didn't leave evidence behind. Because this wasn't just about silencing one man. It was about sending a message to anyone else who might consider doing the same. It couldn't look like murder, couldn't point back to anyone, or leave a trail. Whatever was decided had to be precise, invisible. The instruction would have been simple.
No noise, no trace, no proof.
No gun, no blade, no visible attack. Nothing you could point to and say, that's what killed him. Just an umbrella. Ordinary on the outside, the kind you'd pass 100 times without a second glance. But inside, it was something else entirely. Engineered, precise, built for a single moment and a single outcome. Hidden within the tip, a pellet. Only 1.7 millimeters wide, machined from metal, almost impossible to see unless you knew exactly where to look. And inside it, ricin, a toxin derived from castor beans and devastatingly efficient. Once inside the body, it shuts down protein synthesis. Cells stop functioning. Systems begin to fail. Not instantly, but inevitably. The pellet itself was the real design, drilled with 2 tiny holes, not to inject, but to slowly release. Because this wasn't meant to be dramatic. No immediate collapse. Create a scene, or leave any clear cause. By the time symptoms appear, the poison is already moving, beyond reach. And before anyone realizes something is wrong, it's already too late. Almost impossible to prove. Clean, quiet, and for a time, perfect. Back in the hospital, Markov was running out of time. Steadily, like something inside him had already made the decision. His organs began to fail, one after another. Not violently, quietly, shutting down in sequence. His blood pressure collapsed. His skin turned pale, cold to the touch. His strength gone. Even speaking began to cost him. And still, he came back to it. The umbrella, the sting, that moment in the rain, repeating it like a detail that refused to be lost. So they searched, pushed further, tested more, chasing something they couldn't see and didn't yet understand.
But time doesn't wait for understanding. It doesn't slow down for answers. And whatever had been set in motion days earlier was now finishing its work. September 11th, 1978, Georgi Markov died. And with him, the truth behind it all. Or at least, that's what it looked like at the time.
The autopsy changed everything. Because this time, they weren't just looking for answers, they were looking deeper. And that's when they found it. Not immediately, but there, buried deep in his leg. Missable at a glance, unremarkable, unless you knew what you were seeing. A tiny metal sphere, smaller than a grain of rice, almost invisible, but undeniably there. Under magnification, it told a different story. Not random, not natural. Engineered. Its surface drilled with microscopic holes, clean and deliberate, an intricate design. And inside, traces. Only faint, but unmistakable. Ricin. Suddenly, everything aligned. What sounded impossible was now sitting in a lab tray, measured, examined, proven. This wasn't illness, wasn't just coincidence or some unexplained medical anomaly. It was method, planning, execution. This was assassination. The world reacted instantly. Shock, outrage, and fear. Because if this could happen in the middle of the day in central London, it could happen anywhere. All of the signs pointed toward Bulgaria, and behind them, the shadow of the Soviet Union. But the man who did it? Gone. No name, no face, no arrest. The weapon itself? Also never recovered. Officially, the case remains unsolved almost 50 years later. All it took was a moment. A stranger passing by, a polite apology, a weapon hidden in plain sight. No noise, no panic, no warning, just an umbrella, a sting, and a death that still echoes decades later. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapons in the world are the ones no one believes are real. If you enjoyed this, please consider to hit that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll answer every single one. Being a small creator, this helps me immensely, so thank you so much for your support and for watching. If you want to see more, subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.